every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the SKNIS Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards. Welcome to InFocus, a weekly program where we zoom in on what's happening within and throughout the government, your government. Mental health, a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being, is a term that is often heard, but seldom talked about in St. Kitts and Nevis, at least until now. Members of Generation Z are seemingly more in touch with their emotions and are actually willing to share and talk more about mental health issues. Is this good news for St. Kitts and Nevis, or is it a cause for concern? A possible indicator that our young people are feeling more stressed. Michele Blake, Director of the National Counseling Unit, is here with me in studio to share more about issues pertaining to mental health and the support services that are available to all. Stay with us as we delve into your government, your business.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Welcome back to InFocus, and allow me now to welcome Miss Michele Blake. Excuse me, that would be Mrs. Michele Blake. Welcome, Mrs. Blake.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Richards. Thank you.
Following on my intro, I just want to jump quickly into a topic. And do you think that residents of St. Kitts and Nevis are waking up to the importance of mental health?
I am going to say absolutely. The term mental health is just one that is mainstreamed into just about every kind of discussion. So we're hearing it a lot. We're hearing mental health in the workplace. We're hearing about the importance of people to check in on their mental health. We're hearing about people being okay with checking in on their neighbors, their friends, and wanting more information. So that alone says that there is definitely movement towards that sort of destigmatization of mental health being a them versus us issue. I could definitely say that I think we are moving in the right direction towards just sensitivity, awareness, and at the end of the day, advocacy for mental health matters. Yeah.
And mental health covers exactly what? It's a very broad
It's a broad topic, yes. So when we talk about mental health, we talk about a person's ability to manage life stressors, to be able to find their resilience and be able to bounce back from life stresses, to be able to find meaning, to be able to find connections, to be able to operate in community. And community could be whatever their community is. It could be a community at school, it could be a community at work, it could be a physical community, just to find their community and to find place in their community. So really it is overall an overall state of well-being and contentment that allows people to manage life difficulties and life situations. So if we look at it from that perspective, it makes us recognize that mental health is all of our concerns. It's not just of an illness perspective or health or wellness perspective. It's an all of us perspective, because all of us need to be able to manage our emotions. All of us need to be able to have a sense of resilience and contentment in life. All of us need to be able to cope with the things that come up in life. So it really is a matter that pertains to all. And as I said, since we're having conversations about it, people are recognizing that that they have the ability to do things about their mental health. And so I know we're going to discuss a lot of topics today here on mental health, including mental health and movement, so people could look at different ways that they are able to just manage some just basic things in a very proactive way. So yeah, mental health.
Being able to cope. Now, of course, you are, as we established earlier, you are the director of the National
Counseling Center.
Yes. Center, right.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that center.
Right. Okay. So the National Counseling Center is comprised of clinical staff and of support staff that serve families. Okay. So clinical staff are those staff members that have clinical training of at least a master's level, so that intervention with people could be at a particular level, clinical level, right? So these are people who are able to deal with matters that are a little bit more complicated, and really just work people through a therapeutic process. The family matters counselors, so there are 3 clinical staff. The family matters counselors are 4 counselors who work with families to strengthen them. So they have a role to play, obviously, when we're talking about mental health, because we recognize that if families are distressed, if families are struggling, if families are not operating at an optimal level, it is going to impact members of the family in a way that could impact their mental health later down the road. So the Family Matters counselors work directly with the families. They meet the families where they are, in their homes, in their communities. They work with the children in the families and the adults in the families separately and then jointly. They really bring a very practical approach to helping families just have better outcomes for themselves, just have more positive outcomes for how they relate to each other.
And why
so
do you think
that
families are stressed based on the evidence that you would have come up with?
There are all kinds of stresses now that contribute. I mean, there are financial stresses, there are life stresses, there is more awareness of and accessibility to world matters that affect people. So people are taking in a lot more, and people, including children, are taking in a lot more with what's going on. And with so many things that are happening, sometimes families have a difficulty in just sort of managing that. There have been things that have been impacted over the years. The support structures that helped families over the years don't look the same today. So those are the kinds of things that impact families. Yeah.
And the other aspects of the counseling center?
So as I said, it's the clinical staff and the family matters staff. So the clinical staff deal with the clinical matters that come to us. And by clinical matters, I mean matters that have a mental health component, a strong mental health component. So we're talking about the things like the traumas, the clinical diagnosis of things like the mood disorders, the depression, the anxiety, the things that impact people in a way that sometimes they're not able to manage their day-to-day life. So the clinical matters. Yeah.
Okay. What is your role and responsibility at the National Counseling Center?
So I'm the director of the center, and my role basically involves just making sure that the mandate of the center, which is to provide mental health services, that the mandate is carried out and the mandate fits within the government's overall assessment of what needs to happen to make sure that families and people are safe. So it's just that supervisory overseer role. I also am a clinical counselor, so I also maintain a client load.
And of course the Prime Minister, who is a medical doctor, the Honorable Dr. Terence True, he would have spoken about the importance of mental health. Does that make a difference to yourself, to the staff, that the Prime Minister himself is aware of these issues and is lending support, being more or less an advocate for such?
Absolutely. It's always important to have advocacy in high places. And so once there is somebody who has the ability to guide conversations differently, like the Prime Minister has, and if he hasn't, the fact that he has a sensitivity towards mental health matters, of course that makes our journey a bit more, doable. Right.
When was the center established?
The center was established, it has to be at least 25 years ago. It's been that long. It's gone under different names, but it's been established for a while within the various names of the Ministry of Social Development. The Ministry of Social Development would have gone through different names.
Right.
Ministry of Social Development and Gender Affairs have been associated with different departments, but just at least 25 years that's been in function.
And how would you say the services have evolved at the center?
Oh, well, we definitely have evolved from a point of just providing, well, first of all, the evolution has come in terms of how we, I don't want to say sell our services, but how we communicate to people what services are available. So there's definitely been evolution that have come from the point of view of people having awareness and understanding of mental health and of the service. So we've evolved from that point. We've evolved in terms of just ensuring that our clinical staff have more access to evidence-based, because that again is another one of the buzzwords that's now evidence-based interventions. So you're coming from a place, I mean, mental health is they're focusing on it as almost like a scientific approach to dealing with mental health matters, so evidence-based approaches. So we definitely have had more opportunities for training to make sure that when we do engage with people, it's from that. And even our family matters counselors, their basis of how they work with people comes from an evidence-based approach, from the family systems approach. So really sort of taking it to that level of global acknowledgement and recognition that that's how we deal with matters.
How do cases generally come to the center? Is it a case where someone can walk in and request services, or do they have to be referred? How does that work?
All of that, all of the above. Referrals, and referrals come in all the time. People will call the center and make a referral over the phone, and sometimes people will come in and say, you know, well, I heard about this and I want to, you know, have services. But however the referrals come in, they must go through a basic, just a very basic intake, so we have a sense of who wants to come in, what it is they want, just a very basic documentation of who is seeking what. And then of course the cases are matched with availability, competency, ability, comfort level, all those things of the counselor to be able to deal with the matter.
Right. Okay. So then what about the type of treatments that will be available now? Because of course you established that there are two sections, one that deals with the clinical aspects and the family. So the treatment generally is used. What type of treatment is used? Again,
we go with the evidence-based approaches to treating mental health matters.
And the evidence is based on practices that happen here, overseas as well?
International best practices. International best practices. And just to give an example, for example, when you're dealing with people with substance use disorders, motivational interviewing is an evidence-based approach to dealing with substance-based disorders. So, you know, we could call different names of different things, but the point is that there are evidence-based approaches that we use in our, you know, the execution of our duties.
Okay. And is there some relationship with the day treatment center? Of course, we know that that is something that was established.
We all in the mental health field relate, whether it is just being able to talk with each other about cases that are common to us, clientele that are common to us. So we have conversations with our partners about clients that we may share. So from that perspective, we work with the Mental Health Day Treatment Center, we work with the Joseph and France Psychological Services, we work with the Community Mental Health Services, we work with school guidance counselors. So all of these are people who have some input with us with respect to sharing case management of cases so that people could have a better chance, again, better outcomes. Yeah.
And how would you say the center interacts, it engages with the public?
Well, we have things like this. There's always some sort of request for presentations, and so the fact that there is request for presentation means that there is awareness and there is interest in. So there's always a request for presentations. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram page that we share different things on, and people follow us and, you know, have some sort of insight into what happens here. People call the center, and so we engage through just making sure that our services are known to people, and people have an understanding of how to touch base with us.
And that service, you said that the request that comes in for presentations, etc. So that would be from what type of agencies?
Everywhere. It's from government agencies, non-government agencies, civic organizations, community groups, grassroots organizations, everywhere. So again, it goes to show that the whole conversation around mental health is one that definitely is growing.
Okay. And that's something that you welcome, of course.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely, because the more there's awareness, the less stigma that there is. Stigma keeps people away from services. Stigma keeps people staying longer to deal with whatever the issue is, so that there's more of a chance of crisis, and it's harder to deal with a situation when there's crisis than not. So stigma removes that sort of barrier that says that I shouldn't or I can't do something about what's going on with me. So the more there's awareness and the more there's education, the less there's stigma.
Yeah. And talk to us a bit, if you will, about the type of collaboration that takes place with schools. Of course, the Ministry of Education, their guidance counselors that are based in the school, but young people, they have a particular challenge, a particular issues. Let me not say challenge, because the issues that I face, that I'm sure you would have faced going through school, is not what young people face today. And young people, there always seems to be that pressure, especially when you hit the teenage years. And we were going to talk a bit more about specific challenges, but I just want to get a sense in terms of how the center collaborates with the Ministry of Education, also with schools.
We have a good working relationship with the guidance counselors. Good from the point of view of we share information when needed. We provide support to them when, again, through the collaborative approach, we provide support to the guidance counselors network by trying to see if we could continue to help them improve on their own skills so that they have ways of effectively working with children in school. But at the end of the day, many of the situations that they deal with in school are ones that sometimes they seek guidance from us on how to deal with matters. But at the end of the day, many of the situations in schools come about from children needing to be heard, needing safe spaces to communicate things that are going on with them, having the opportunity to be acknowledged. And so, for example, and I'm just using an example, let's just say a child is dealing with a bully or feels that he's being bullied in school. That doesn't necessarily belong to a clinical space. Guidance counselors could sit with them. They may not be able to fix the situation depending on what it is, but they could do a few things that would help the child's mental health. They could provide advocacy. The child is in school, they could see what they could do in the school setting to be able to address that situation. They could provide connections with people who you need to connect with. Maybe there need to be connections between the parents and the child of the person who may be bullying. They provide, the guidance counselors could provide that immediate safe space for the child to express, for the child to be able to manage some of the emotions that come. They could get specific guidance about perhaps how to deal with things. So right there and then in the school, from the guidance counselors, they're able to get that. We come into play when there are matters that are a little bit more complicated. And so guidance counselors collaborate with us for either giving them guidance about how to deal with matters or referring cases up to us. So we do have a collaborative relationship.
Okay. And as we speak about schools and families, as you had established earlier, we want to delve a bit more in terms of some of the mental health issues that affect the family. But before we have that conversation, we'll take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be right back with more In Focus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Welcome back to In Focus. I have with me here Mrs. Delacroix J. Blake, Michele Delacroix Blake, who is the Director of the National Counseling Center here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, Mrs. Blake, we want to touch a bit now on the broader issues connected to mental health, and we want to look specifically at the number of issues that relate specifically to mental health. And let's make a distinction, first of all, between mental health and emotional health. Is there a difference?
I am going to say that they fall under the same umbrella, because when you're talking about overall mental health, you're talking about, as I said, a person's ability to be able to deal with things. When you're talking about emotional health basically is speaking about a person's ability to appropriately express. So emotional health is part of mental health. So, for example, sometimes we stunt people's emotional health. Sometimes we say to people, no, don't feel bad about that. Don't cry about that. Don't feel sad about that. Don't get upset about that. So really we kind of convey that expressions, normal and healthy expressions of emotions shouldn't happen in some cases. And so for some people, because they're unable to do that, their emotional health is impacted. They're unable to express effectively. Sometimes you have people who are always angry, and sometimes that anger comes from inability to manage emotions in a healthy way. So while mental health is an overall umbrella, the emotional aspect of how people just take care of themselves is definitely very specific.
And as we speak about the families now, I had a discussion actually yesterday with a young man, and we were talking a bit about mental health. And he mentioned that there are cases where, there is sometimes that disconnect with parents, where a parent walks into a room and see their daughter, or in some cases a son, crying. And the typical response might be to just step back quietly, not be made your presence felt, as opposed to trying to engage the child to find out what the issue may be.
Yeah, sometimes that happens,
Talk to us a bit about that disconnect that seems to be taking place between the generations, and how such situations really should be handled, in the best way, of course.
I guess what I'd say about that is, I don't know that it's a disconnect that is just happening. I mean, I know from older generations, parents didn't really, have a sort of soft approach to something is going on, let me take care of you kind of thing. So I don't know that it's a new thing. In fact, I think parents now are starting at least to want to hear a little bit more of what can I do. So maybe the discussion should happen, just sort of make parents feel a little bit more assured that there doesn't need to be a fixing of something to be able to help a child process it or manage it. So I say all that to say there are things that happen in families. Families are made up of people, and people sometimes have a hard time connecting with difficult emotions. People have a hard time with seeing somebody in distress and knowing how to respond to them. You'd hear people say, well, I don't know what to do, coming back to that. And again, it doesn't need to be a doing or a fixing. So people sometimes have that. People sometimes have, and families have this, expectations about what should happen, and if there is a presentation that is different to what the expectation is, sometimes they don't know what to do with that. So I think what you're talking about from the young man is that sometimes people set up within themselves this notion that there is an inability to share. Children feel unable to share with their parents because their parents are not going to get it, they're not going to understand. Parents feel unable to support because I don't want to agree, because I don't want to sort of make you feel as if I'm agreeing because I don't agree. And so there is a disconnect in terms of perhaps what expectation is communicated. But I think it goes back to, as we're doing these kinds of things, we talk in schools, we talk to parents of toddlers, we talk to parents about developmental norms and stages, we talk to parents about checking in with their own selves to recognize that when you feel a particular way, tell me how it feels for you, tell me about that, and what would you like for somebody to do, so you kind of make that experience something that parents could have a real understanding of. This is how I feel and this is what I would like, that's what my child would like. Move the conversations away from fixing things being the thing that needs to happen. People need connections, not necessarily fixing. I remember when we had COVID, and there were lots of discussions going on about COVID and its impact on mental health and so forth. As you would imagine, there was an impact. And sometimes we'd have discussions and people would talk about some very real situations, loss of job, loss of income and so forth. And, you know, sometimes there's a sense of, well, what could you as a mental health professional tell somebody who has lost their job in terms of fixing it? They have bills to pay. And it really isn't about that. I think a person who has lost their job knows that I can't give them a job, or I can't fix that. So it's about providing that connection. What is it you're going through with that loss, the sense of just fear? I could connect with you on fear. I could hear how fear sounds to you and how it plays out in your life. Disappointment in self. I could hear how you feel as if you should have been able to do something about this, so you could connect to them on things that are important. So in the same way, when parents have children who are dealing with things, it's about connecting with them and helping them recognize that what they are experiencing, what they are feeling as a result of the experience has validity. And once you have that connection, then you could move to, okay, what are we going to do about it? But the connection has to come first.
I know that one of the strategies that is recommended in terms of parents engaging with their children, and I would say generally adults as well too. Normally you see a child and you ask, how was school? The child will typically respond, good. The suggestion is that you should ask, instead of asking how was school, you ask, what did you learn today in school? Or what interesting happened today in school? Something that would further the conversation.
Further the conversation, or tell me about a good thing that happened today. Tell me about a thing that was challenging for you, just something that furthers the conversation. You're right. So if parents could hear these things that we're talking about and then they take it upon themselves to do one thing, that could be a way of helping parents to shift some of those normal kinds of things.
And as we talk about children, of course, we have to look at the roles that social media has to play in affecting one's mental health. Of course, there are times when a person posts something on social media, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and they hope to get whatever amount of likes, and it doesn't happen. Or they get negative feedback. There's that cyberbullying that takes place as well too. Yeah. Talk to us a bit about the trends of social media and how it can really impact a person's mental health, because some would say the best thing to do is to put down your phone, but that's not practical for today's children.
Right. The fact is, social media is associated with high levels of anxiety and depression in children. That's the truth. And for some of the same reasons that you just mentioned, it takes away that buffer. Everything is immediate in social media. So it takes away that buffer space for somebody to be able to sit with something, to process it in a particular way, to respond to it in a particular way. It takes away that buffer space. So you have these immediate things. The immediate responses also set up a very unrealistic expectation of what is, right? So for children who see social media as a way of being able to, or a way of determining what their worth is. So the amount of likes you get is connected to what you're worth. And that's where the problem comes in. So social media definitely has been connected with the rise of mood disorders in children.
And the advice?
As you correctly say, it's difficult because we are in an age that is technologically, advanced, and children know more than us. So for us to say, put down your devices and leave them alone all the time is perhaps not practical. But there could be some frameworks put into place. So for example, a family that is connected could indicate to children, part of family rules, this is how we work in here. At 6 o'clock, all of the phones go down, including mine, and we do something together, including some of the movement that I want to talk about. We do something together. At 6 o'clock, we put the phones down and we sit together and we watch a program on TV. The program on TV comes on and there's an issue comes up and we talk about it. If this happened to you, how would you feel? What would you do? So it comes back to what we said earlier, connections. And for some parenting practices, because parents have a lot to do sometimes there is not a lot of awareness of perhaps how to best engage children, they leave the tools to the children, and so the children are on them all the time, and this is where it comes in. So what we're saying in terms of advice is provide some balance. So social media does some good things, and has some good things, but provide balance. Provide a grounding, a relationship with your child, so that the child benefits from your connection and your interest in what he's doing, rather than what social media says.
And as we speak about technology, of course, there's also mental health issues that can derive from things that happen to, say, older persons. Of course, there is some phishing scams. Sometimes, it used to be an email. You used to get an email to say, hey, this is your son, your daughter, whoever, to say that you are overseas and you need money, and persons would be fall prey, unfortunately, because it's a scam. But now they're using technology, they're using AI. So actually they can replicate the person's voice, a family member, and have them tricked into sending money, which of course is also a mental health issue. Absolutely.
The impact could be, imagine losing your life savings. Imagine thinking that something happened to a family member of yours and you don't know, you just hear this information, this person is in jail, and you don't know, what is going on. Imagine what that could do to somebody. So the whole question of AI in mental health is one that is emerging, because with that comes conversations about ethics of AI. I mean, AI, the progression of AI is just exponentially way ahead of anything. It's just developing. And so we have to have some conversations around that. But yes, all of these impact people.
What do you think, as we go back to young people, that they're more in tune with mental health? Perhaps social media might be a part of that.
So I was talking about the fact that there's some benefits of social media. One of the things that happens as we have more access to information is that there is I'm going to use the term, a flatlining of issues. It's no longer an issue here, an issue there. All of a sudden, everything now becomes in the same pool. So young people are aware of the fact that, I have rights. I need to be able to speak up. If somebody speaks to me in a way that makes me feel uncomfortable, I have the ability to talk to somebody about it. I shouldn't be made to feel in a particular kind of way because of the global aspect of information and their ability to access that. They understand these things. Yeah.
And so an issue in America is no longer an issue in America.
No, it's an issue right here. Everything that we see in America, we see right here.
And also, you get access to things that can be distressing as well. Of course, we would have seen some of the tornado damages overseas. We would have seen some violent acts of terror. These things are filmed and put there for anyone to access.
Absolutely. I mean, everything is there, and whether we realize it or not, things affect us. We're human beings. So when there's an onslaught of things coming at you, and you sit there and just take it in, it can affect your mental health. So if you, as you say, you're taking in the tornado damage and the wars and the genocides and all kinds of things, you're taking that in. Even here within our federation, something happens and it's shared on social media, graphic images and just things that affect people. So again, there's just overwhelming absorption of all of that, and so we have to intentionally separate ourselves from. You could say, look, okay, I'll spend an hour looking at news, and then after that I will do something else. Or I've asked people not to share particular images with me, and I've put some boundaries around that, and if they share, then I'll block them. I mean, you put some things in place for what works for you, but you have to be in charge of recognizing the impact of these things on you and doing something about it.
Of course, there's also an issue as it relates to mental health and young people recognizing it, that it would help to shape the way conversations are had. It would help to shape the way we think, which could really actually help to shape culture that is here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Do you think that having these conversations will help to cause a shift, or do you think that there is a shift that is taking place in cultural perspectives as it relates to mental health?
Yes, and it goes back to what I said in terms of it being destigmatized. Once you have language that is strengths-based in families, and once you have language that destigmatizes help-seeking behavior, and once you have language that encourages self-care, then it is going to shift it away. Because remember, the language that we're shifting away from is the language of things like just be strong, don't let that bother you, you know that I love you even though I don't show you. You're moving things away from that sort of rigid kind of approach through information and through education and through experiences. So if young people are starting to say, well, wait a minute, you know, I could openly talk about something, I could connect to somebody who could help me through something, it means that there will be shifts. People will be more, perhaps more inclined to manage things that impact them emotionally, manage things in a healthy way, so that perhaps you don't have self-destructive behavior as much, you know, just kind of shifting the conversations about how people could take care of themselves. And again, as we look at movement as something that people could do for themselves in any age group, in any kind of mental health presentation, you know, we're talking about one thing that people can do that can help to shift just the overall experience.
Right. Is that a good thing in your opinion? Because I established that in the intro, I asked the question, is that does it mean that, you know, it's a good news for St. Kitts and Nevis, or is it a sign that our people are becoming more stressed?
No, we've always been stressed. It's a good news that we are talking about it, and it's good news that we are talking about how to deal with it, whether it is through professional services or whether it is through self-care or self-help. The fact is, stress has always been there, and we talked about the fact that a lot of perhaps the support services that traditionally were there, we don't see them as much now. So people have to deal with stress in particular ways. There are more stressors, there are more requirements on people's financial capabilities. There's more requirements on children and school and so forth. So stress is there, stress has always been there. But the fact that people are accessing services and talking about it means that people want to do something about it. So I see it as a good thing.
And of course, there are some steps that persons can do to take care of it themselves to help to maintain their self-care as it relates to mental health. And we're going to talk a bit more about that and get into the whole aspect of movement.
Yes.
As we talk about shift, we're going to talk about a movement.
Okay.
So we'll get into that, but we're going to take a quick break first.
Okay.
We'll be right back with more In Focus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Welcome back to In Focus. We continue our discussion on mental health with the head of the National Counseling Center here in St. Kitts, Mrs. Blake, Mrs. Michele Blake. All right, so as we speak about mental health, we continue our conversation. As we established earlier, May is recognized in the United States, particularly. It's popular for being...
Right, it's sure, yes, it's spreading, but yes, it's from them.
Yes, for Mental Health Month. You know, it's a month where you raise awareness about it. Now, the theme this year was moving for our mental health.
Right.
Can you share a bit about the relevance of that theme?
Right, okay, so this is something that I have, you know, I have a lot of interest in this discussion because it is something that everybody could do for themselves. So before I even start on that, you know, you talk about maybe in Mental Health Awareness Month, and we've certainly seen and been a part of a few initiatives during this month that suggests that there is, again, more of a comfort level with discussing mental health. And so we just had last Saturday that very successful mental health walk that the Development Bank coordinated, and of course they invited partners, but huge success, lots of people. And again, it was Movement for Mental Health. On Friday last, I was part of a very, very interesting space that solid waste management facilitated, where they're talking about mental health in the workplace. And so they had all of the HR professionals and senior staff in different organizations come, and there was discussion on mental health in the workplace. Those things warmed my heart because it means that we are having the relevant discussions. So we have May, where we're looking at mental health awareness. And mental health awareness is about sharing information, sharing experiences, building safety for people to be able to talk about mental health, and advocacy. So those are the things that come with awareness building. So this year it was Movement on Mental Health, and you asked about the importance. Now, why I feel so strongly about this is because it's so important for people to take responsibility for their own mental health, right? It is so important for us to recognize that every matter that a person, whatever matter that a person is dealing with, every solution does not have to be seeking out clinical care. No, if you need to seek out clinical care, then you seek out clinical care in the different areas that clinical care is available. But there must be, because remember I went back and said mental health, the overall definition, the definition speaks to ongoing taking care of your ability to cope, right? So it means it's an ongoing intentional thing. So Movement for Mental Health is important because it puts ownership in your hands, your responsibility for taking care of yourself on a regular basis. It is something, movement is something that any and everybody can do. An 80-year-old could move for their mental health and feel better. A 6-year-old could move for their mental health and feel better. So it's accessible and available to everybody. It impacts the mood of people. So whether it is a person is dealing with perhaps one particular acute life situation, something that just came up once, right? Or they're dealing with complex mental health issues, movement helps in being able to manage some of those emotions.
And when you say movement, you're talking about physical activity.
So I'm definitely going to get to that. Okay. So the importance of movement reduces stress. Movement improves mood because once you move, and I'm talking about things like, when people walk, you swim, those kinds of things, the brain helps you. The brain releases something called endorphins. Endorphins are feel-good chemicals. So the body naturally has a way of being able to lift its mood. And so we have to be able to engage and recognize that when we move, we are helping the body do what it does naturally. So in terms of taking care of your mental health and movement, you have that. Movement enhances cognitive functioning. Once you move, there's more oxygen that goes to your brain. When more oxygen goes to your brain, you have more ability to remember, to process, to concentrate, those kinds of things. It alleviates things like anxiety. When you move, it helps your body to regulate. We call it just because sometimes depends on what the situation is. A person is in a state of dysregulation. Their body feels off, right? And so when there is movement is one of the most direct and simplest ways to regulate your body. Okay, so of course it helps with better management of chronic situations. Chronic ill health impacts a person's mental health. So if you're chronically ill, there is an impact on your mental health. So movement helps with that. So it just teaches all of us that we're able to sort of take care of ourselves by movement. So you ask, what do we mean by movement? Movement could be anything. So movement could be, we see a lot of people walking at afternoons, and people take that seriously. People walk at mornings or at afternoons. They get together in groups. They go on their own. They buy the clothes to go walking. Yes. I mean, they take it seriously. They go to the gyms and so forth. So movement in terms of walking, movement in terms of even yoga. Yoga is stretching your body and paying attention to what happens in your body. and inhaling and taking deep breaths and stretching so that your body just feels better. So movement, swimming, gardening. Sometimes people take up things like, what's that thing they call, taekwondo, those kinds of things, martial arts.
Yes.
Movement. So the point that we're making here is anything that puts your body in a place where there is action, right? Anything that puts your body in a place where there's mindfulness in terms of what you're doing does have a positive impact on just your internal state.
And the important things as we speak about technology as well, too, as you speak about movement.
Technology.
Yes, there is, there are a lot of videos on YouTube. And as you said, they are age appropriate. So I could think of, there are some exercises that can be done for persons with mobility challenges.
Exactly.
Or someone who is elderly, who is not able to be as flexible.
Exactly.
And those are the kind of movements that we're talking about that is saying is healthy. So it's not just good for the body, it's also good for the mind.
Absolutely, and the mind and the body are connected. And it, let's just say, for example, you remember we talked about the children and being on the telephones all the time and so forth. You could imagine what happens when a family comes home in the afternoon and say, all right, everybody put down their phones, we are going to walk together. And as we walk in, the children running along, they're picking some of the flowers on the way, they're coming running back to you asking, what is this? So there's movement, there is socialization, there's connection, all that impacts our mental health. So there's so many options, but you're so correct. If I can't go to the gym or if I can't go to walk, I could put on something on YouTube and find something that's appropriate to my needs.
And that type of care also will help in the sense of you're being proactive because you know how you feel, you know what moods you're going through.
Exactly.
Who best to diagnose your feelings and take action.
Exactly. And we could do it. We could do it at lunchtime. I have friends that live in some of the other islands, and one of the things they say about St. Kitts is you all have that beautiful green space in the middle of Bastia, that square that you could do so much with, and people do. So, it doesn't have to be that you wait until the end of the day to go, to sort of have this formal walk. During my lunch hour, I could walk around the square twice and then go back to my job. So we could do that for ourselves. Workplaces could help. Workplaces could help by encouraging, and you see it sometimes. A workplace would have a sports group or a walking group, and they get together once a week and they walk and go someplace, and again it develops camaraderie between people, which of course impacts your mental health. It stretches them, it moves them, it allows for them to, when you're walking in open space, it allows for you to be impacted by what is happening in the open space, the breeze, the air, the smells, the sounds, which again are things that you take in, and it helps with your mental health. Workplaces could encourage people to walk up the steps rather than take an elevator. I had to go to a meeting once in a building in town, and the meeting space was at the top of a couple of floors. So the people who work up, they have to walk up those steps every day. And I guess it could be difficult sometimes, but it really is helpful for them to be able to do that. I talked about the family matters counselors, and one of the things they sometimes do, and they're connecting the family with each other, is they encourage things like do something outdoors, get together as a family and grow some sweet peppers, grow a garden, grow some flowers, and in the afternoon you all get together and work together on that. So it's an outdoor activity, it's movement, it's a connector, it improves mental health, it just improves overall. So there are things that we can do to take care of ourselves. When we do those things, we're teaching children to be able to take care of themselves. So if a child is inside and he's just sort of struggling, or something has affected the child in school, and we just, obviously we have to be responsive to children, and sometimes children need a moment. But if we leave them alone in their room with their phones and, just kind of sitting in that, then we may not be teaching them, we may not be using the opportunity to teach them that you can do something, man, let's get up and go outside and walk. So you're teaching them to be able to take control over and responsibility for how they feel in a way that they could do.
And so as you mentioned, the backyard gardening, last week we had officials from the Ministry of Social Services, and they were talking about the family unit, and that was one of the recommendations of how they can actually combat climate change.
Absolutely.
Having a backyard garden.
Right.
So here's another benefit.
Another benefit of that. Yeah. So we're looking at it from various points. But yeah.
And another aspect, important aspect to mention as well too, is that with movement, can be done at your own pace.
At your own pace.
So there's no overexertion.
Right. It is self-directed, self-paced. You're checking in on yourself. You know what I could do. Like I know with that mental health walk over to the end of Majors Bay, I know that I couldn't do that, but I could do some other things.
Right. Okay. Yes. So how can would you say that the concept of mindfulness movement, explain to us the concept behind that?
Yes. So when we talk about mindfulness again is a new concept. When we're talking about evidence-based, mindfulness is a concept that you're hearing about more recently in terms of helping people just regulate themselves. So mindfulness basically, just putting it in a nutshell, has to do with being present and responding to and taking in what is presently around you. So a lot of times, we spend a lot of times in the past, what I should have done, ruminating about. So we spend a lot of time there, or we spend a lot of time in the future, what if and anxiety, but we don't spend as much time in the present. So mindfulness movement is about, let's just say you're going for a run. You're paying attention to what your body is doing on that run. You're paying attention to how your muscles feel. You're paying attention to how your breath is coming. You're paying attention to what is going on around you and how it's impacting you. You're paying attention to if your body feels as if it's able to go for 5 more minutes or not. So you're paying attention. So mindfulness is about really getting the benefit of listening to your body as you work out, as you exercise, listening to your body and paying attention to what it is doing to be able to manage what's going on with you. So it really is a focus on the now.
But there are a lot of distractions in the environment as you do that. Of course, we going through, well, not so much as of late because the temperatures have dropped a bit. We had some rain, thank God for that. But, you know, in terms of climate change and the way things happen around us now, how does one really stay mindful when you are in an environment where there's things that you can't necessarily control? So, for instance, as you mentioned, you could be on your run, and while you're trying to pay attention to what's going on, there's a dog that is barking, there's a parent who's beating a child, there's a car that is blowing, there are many distractions there. So it really calls for a different focus that one would have to take. So for someone who may not be as disciplined as it relates to the mind, what's advice you have for them there?
So I think we get information around us all the time, and whether we realize it or not, we filter out a lot of information because we really can't focus on everything that comes to us. So you're correct. You're going for a run and the dog starts barking. There's a quick assessment that is done in terms of paying attention to what that means from a point of view of danger, safety. Is the dog barking? Is it the dog behind a fence? Is it following me? You make a quick assessment. So nothing is wrong with making that quick assessment. You're human. You are going to make sure that what we do as a human organism is we keep ourselves safe, emotionally, physically, everything. So you pay attention. So the dog is just a dog barking behind the door. So behind the gate. So I recognize that, I make sense of it, and I go back to paying attention to my breathing, paying attention to my muscles, paying attention to how the palms of the soles of my feet feel as I'm running up the hill. So the awareness is just awareness to make sure everything is okay, and then I still go back to, because mindfulness, as you say, is intentional. I bring myself back to, okay, how do I feel? How am I breathing? What is happening with me? How is it? Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so what do you want to leave persons with now as it relates to the aspect of managing mental health?
Okay. It seems like it's hard to leave people with one thing, right? Because we've talked about so many things today. I think I want to say to people, or just sort of encourage people to recognize that having the conversations like what we're having here today, having them on some level is okay and important. The things we're talking about here today, people could institute those anywhere, in homes, in their workspaces, anywhere. I don't have to be a mental health professional to say, Ian, how are you doing? You don't look so good today. You all right? Right? So just really sort of connecting the dots with people and being okay with knowing that as you explore with each other, the goal isn't for fixing things, but the goal is for connecting. And once people start to feel connection, then they feel the ability to be heard, and so then the scope broadens for what could happen in terms of help. I also want to leave people with the tidbit really, that there's a lot going on around us that affects us, so we always have to pay attention to us. You know, sometimes people say, I feel a kind of way. You can't quite put your finger on it. And sometimes it's because of all the things that are going on that are not expressed, not felt, not processed. So just kind of reminding people that they are affected by things. That's important to check in with yourself. And lastly, for the context here, just reminding people that something as simple as movement, which all of us have the ability to do for ourselves in our context, from children right up to the elderly, has the ability to help you manage some of the things that you need to manage in your life.
And if persons need further assistance as it relates to mental health and help, where can they get that?
So I am going to sort of lay out the whole scope, because again, mental health help is not just call the counseling center. It could come from speaking to a trusted pastor. I just feel like I need to express. It could come from sitting in school with a child's guidance counselor and having a conversation about some concerns about the child and having some feedback from the guidance counselor. It could be talking to your doctor. It could be talking to the nurse in the community health center to which you go and get your regular checkups. It could be touching base with some of the more established clinical services. There's so many private services that are available. And sometimes people want private services. There are private services available. The counseling center offers services. Of course, as people recognize that they want help, and as that recognition becomes more sort of prominent in the experience, everybody may get up and call the counseling center, and we do as much as we could to try and address issues. But the point that I'm making is help comes from asking a question and not just leaving it there, asking several questions, because it could be that this doesn't work out, let me try this, let me try this, let me talk to my doctor. Something is wrong, let me go to my doctor and let me talk to him about the fact that I'm feeling overwhelmed. Let's see what could come from that. So we have services that come through government, and the services are not necessarily directly related to mental health per se, but services that mitigate against mental health concerns. So if there are things going on in the family, a lot of financial stresses and so forth, you know what, let me talk to somebody to be able to see how I could manage those so they don't become overwhelming. So the point becomes awareness, and once there's awareness, reaching out to see if somebody could either assist or point you in the direction. Yeah.
And as we established, it's a U.S. more or less observation that is taking place, but also the UN also recognizes mental health in October. That's on October 10th.
Right, so that's World Mental Health Day, and that is a globally recognized UN calendarized event every year, World Mental Health Day, and every year there is a theme that is shared so that people could just have discussions around a particular theme.
And I imagine the center will be out there again helping to spread the message.
Absolutely. In November, we're very October, we're very active. We have a week of activities. We engage with our partners, and we do as much as we could to be able to share, advocate for, have activities, give information, just do different things.
Right. And so certainly we'll keep our ears to the ground and look forward to whatever activities that is coming up. And so final thought, I know that we said that we ask persons, if they need help or whatever, but just quickly, any final thought that you'd like to leave for persons with?
I think, what is one thing I could say? I think one thing I could say basically is I go back to just paying attention to you, paying attention to yourself. right? And once you pay attention to yourself, just recognizing that there's no shame in keeping it with yourself.
Right. I'll quote scripture here. The second greatest commandment is to love others as you love yourself.
Okay.
You can't love persons unless you love yourself, and that relates to a self-awareness that you must have.
Self-awareness, right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, you're right.
All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Mrs. Michele Blake,
Yes.
thank you very much for being with us here on InFocus.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right. And we'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for being with us for this edition. We trust that you will join us next week at the same place, at the same time. I'm Ian Richards.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.